Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
And welcome into the Game Night Podcast. Of course, there was no football Friday today because of high school football on 97.3 ESPN. So I try to bring you guys for the second straight week a Game Night Podcast. We will get back to the football Fridays very soon, but because of the high school football schedule and how crazy the year has been because of COVID-19, here we are sitting here on a Friday night chatting with you here on the Game Night Podcast. Of course, if you catch me each and every week, please hit that like button and hit the subscribe so you catch the podcast each and every week. Of course, Game Night, usually Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. I will get you my football Friday picks, preview the college football schedule, week 11, also my keys to the Eagles game, and more coming up here on the Game Night Podcast. But first, I want to hit on the big college football news of the day before I get to anything else. And that is, you may or may not have heard, but there are 15 college football games that have been yanked from the schedule due to COVID-19 protocols. It's a lot of games being pulled off the schedule, and it's not all because of positive COVID-19 tests. It is because of the protocols which require you that if you were in close contact with anybody, you have to isolate those people. So, for example, Arizona State, they have a handful of positives, but they are isolating about 20-some people. LSU, Maryland, these schools, they don't have a ton of positive tests, but they, according to the protocols, have to isolate, have to have X number of negative tests after you stop feeling symptoms if you do test positive. The protocols are pretty extensive. And I think we're starting to blur the line between an abundance of caution and basically spiting ourselves when it comes to the way the world is handling this COVID-19 situation, pandemic, however you want to refer to it at this point. We're all fatigued. We're all tired. But part of the reason why we're all fatigued and tired is because it's very frustrating about the other news that nobody wants to talk about. But I will talk about it here on the Game Night Podcast. And you got to search and dig the depths of the news cycle to find the other news that came out today. The Pac-12 apologized to Stanford today. You think, why would a college football conference apologize to one of their member universities? Well, because Stanford, without a handful of players, including their starting quarterback last week versus Oregon, a game which Oregon handily won. Well, the Pac-12 announced that the players who were ruled out is because of false positives. This is the second infamous incident in the last couple of weeks of players being removed from a sporting event because of false positives. Kendrick Bourne of the 49ers was also removed from the 49ers game along with other players because of a false positive. 49ers got crushed by the Green Bay Packers on Thursday Night Football. I don't understand how we are at November 13th and we still have false positives. I also don't understand why the majority of the folks who want to have conversations about COVID don't want to talk about these false positives. There were several instances of inconclusive tests in the NBA and the NHL bubbles. And remember, nobody was coming in or out of those bubbles. Once you were in and once you isolated and once you passed your tests, you were in that sterile bubble. But even in the bubble, they were having inconclusive tests back in July, August, and September. It's now November. You're telling me that science hasn't figured out a way have better testing, to have more reliable testing, that we haven't moved beyond this false positive? Are we really sure that every single positive test that has happened in college football, that has happened in the NFL, that has happened at maybe your local high school, for example, where programs like Violent had to shut down their program because of a COVID-19 situation? I understand an abundance of caution, but how about an abundance of doing what is best for your fellow man? I'm starting to wonder if politics has become more important than people's well-being because, like I said, it's November 13th, and we still have a pandemic to worry about. I'm not sitting here saying that COVID-19 isn't real. I'm not one of those people. And I know this is supposed to be a sports podcast, but I'm watching the sports world where Alabama and Ohio State, they can't play games because their opponent has a COVID-19 issue. Now, the Pac-12 at least is trying to be proactive. The Pac-12 announced late Friday that because California and UCLA's opponents had COVID-19 restrictions stripped them of their ability to play the game, that they were going to allow Cal and UCLA to play their games. So the Pac-12 figured out something that the rest of college football hasn't. There's no way you can tell me that schools like Alabama and Ohio State can't play a game this weekend against somebody else who's available on their schedule just because of protocols. It's bad enough that everyone has to deal with the negative side effects of this pandemic. And now you're telling these young men who are trying to do everything right, who are trying to play a game of football, many of them at schools like Alabama and Ohio State and these other big-time schools, they're playing these games partly because either they're trying to audition for the NFL to change their entire lives and set up their futures to have a better life than they already have, or these are young men who are going to school on scholarship. So the only reason why they have an opportunity to go to college is to play football. A very small percentage of college athletes ever play professional sports. So the only reason why they're allowed to even be at school is because of these athletics. So now you are putting question and doubt for the validity of them even having a place in this classroom for the sake of protocols, an abundance of caution. Frankly, I think it's a bunch of bull. You don't really care about these kids. And frankly, if you cared as much about money as you claim to, because that's the real reason why we're playing sports, is it not? Because sports is a money-making industry. Billions of dollars are made off of college football and other sports at the collegiate level every single year. But because of politics, because these conferences don't get along with each other, because everybody wants to be the big shot and the big man in the room, that the Big Ten is not allowed to play anybody outside their conference. That's the rule they made. Nope. No outside competition. Pac-12, same thing. No outside competition. SEC, they don't like to deal with the other conferences because SEC thinks they're better than everybody else. So now you have a bunch of young people who are put into this very awkward position. It's not just this weekend. It's multiple weekends now without playing games. But yet the Pac-12, the school and conference, this conference that started later than everybody else, said, hey, UCLA is under protocol. Cal's under protocol. They have an open date. Why can't they play each other? They're the first ones to figure that you could do that out. It's embarrassing. And frankly, it's embarrassing that these conferences are using COVID-19 as another opportunity to let politics and let regionalism and let ego and let pride get in the way of doing what's best for everybody involved. You could still make your money off of your TV contracts. You could still let these young men go out and play football because they followed every single rule and every single obstacle you have put in their way to even play football this year. But all you care about is we're the Big Ten. We don't trust these other conferences because our protocols are better than theirs. Sounds like a bunch of hogwash to me. I say that Alabama and Ohio State and these other schools should start doing what BYU did. BYU became an independent. You know why BYU is an independent? Because BYU has no conference affiliation because they got tired of the conferences telling them what they can and can't do. BYU wants more from their college football program. They know they'll never be a Notre Dame, but they also know that not having a conference affiliation locking them down, guess what? It allows them to do whatever they want. BYU has allowed themselves to play college football this year without any restrictions. And even better, because they're an independent with a loose affiliation with a conference, because of those things, their star quarterback, Zach Wilson, has been able to spend the entire football season auditioning for the NFL, something that other players have not been able to do because of an abundance of caution. I think schools like Alabama and Ohio State and these other massive institutions should pull the Texas card. 10 years ago, Texas threatened to leave the Big 12 and either go to another conference or become an independent because the conference was getting in their own way of doing the right thing for the kids. Not for money, but for the kids. And Texas said, we're a name brand. We'll just leave. And when Texas threatened that, you know what happened? Oklahoma stood up and said, you know what, Texas? Whatever you do, we'll go with you because we value our scholastic professional sports relationship, even though it's not professional sports, but it's a lot of money being made. But I digress. Oklahoma said, we value you, Texas, because our community values that rivalry. So if you're going to leave, we're going to leave. And as soon as those two massive hulking monsters of the Big 12 stood up, the Big 12 fell in line. But because of perception and because there might be somebody in the media that might say something to make Ohio State or Alabama look like a bunch of radical whatevers, you're right wing, you're left wing, you're this, you're that, because the media is still so focused on politics and not what is just straight up right and wrong. You won't see Alabama and Ohio State stand up and say to their respective conferences, you're going to let us play or we're just going to leave the conference. We're just going to use that opt-out clause that every school has. Because remember, or maybe you don't remember, that's right, because nobody wants to talk about these things. The reason why these schools are a part of these conferences is because of money. The TV money is so massive and it's so well distributed that that's why these schools stay aligned with these conferences. These conferences negotiate the TV contracts for them under the umbrella of amateurism. But Alabama, the biggest school in the SEC, and Ohio State, the biggest school in the Big Ten, if they threatened their opt-out clause, they would threaten the whole financial stability of their conference. Maybe they should have pulled a Texas. But instead, we're all afraid because the pandemic and the media might make us look a certain way. Instead of doing what's right for the kids, instead of asking the right questions about why do we have so many false positives, instead of asking questions about, is there a better way to do this than the way we're doing it now? And instead of having 15 games yanked from the schedule this weekend, we're just supposed to sit here and take it and accept it. It is what it is. Before we get to my college football weekend preview as well as my Eagles-Giants preview, I want to remind you that Game Night is being brought to you by weightliftinghq.com. You've probably heard me talk about how I'm a big health and fitness guy. I'm a guy who loves to go to the gym. I'm a guy who really tries to take care of my health. I've been on that whole, fitness journey. So health and fitness, going to the gym, working out, weightlifting is important to me. So when I heard about weightliftinghq.com and what they can do for my fellow weightlifting and fitness enthusiasts, I was really impressed. Weightliftinghq.com is a local company right here in South Jersey that operates fully online and caters to weightlifters and fitness enthusiasts interested in working out from home. And listen, because of the pandemic, as I just mentioned, maybe you don't want to go back to the gym yet. Maybe you can't afford to go back to the gym. Maybe it's not really something that, works out with your lifestyle. Maybe you need to be home more because maybe you're a parent. Maybe your job requires you to spend a lot of hours working from home. Or maybe you are back at the gym, but because of other life restrictions, you can't get to the gym as often as you want. Well, weightliftinghq.com will deliver workout and fitness equipment right to your home. High-end weightlifting and fitness equipment like bench and squat racks, kettlebells, dumbbells, cardio and fitness machines, and some great accessories like heart rate sensors, fitness watches, resistance bands, and more. You can't beat their local customer service. Their equipment delivery services will set up everything right in your home for you, and they have incredibly competitive prices. So check them out at weightliftinghq.com and use the code radio10 at checkout for 10% off your entire order. That's radio10 at weightliftinghq.com. Don't wait until it's 2021 and you're wondering, what am I doing with my fitness plans? Do I really want to do this? I don't want to do this? Or maybe there's someone coming up for the holiday season and you want to give them some weightlifting equipment for Christmas. Use that code radio10 at checkout for 10% off your entire order. Don't wait. That's weightliftinghq.com, code radio10 for 10% off at weightliftinghq.com. So despite all of the crazy COVID-19 stuff going on in the world we're living in, I'm going to still give you my college football preview for the weekend, and then I'll give you my picks for the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Giants. Of course, that would be this Sunday. But start with the Saturday slate of games. I'm first excited about the games I'm going to be watching, but I don't have picks for, okay? I'm going to start with Army versus Tulane. Army hasn't played in basically a month because of their own situation with COVID-19 protocols. And as I mentioned last week on the podcast, don't forget, the military has a whole nother layer of protocols and standards that most people could never live up to. So let's remember, when the Army or the Navy or the Air Force says we're shut down for COVID, remember, it's probably not just COVID. There's probably something else going on as well that you might never know about because you're not in the military. So with that in mind, yes, Army has not played a single football game since October 24th. Army this year is 6-1, and I'm not fully sure what this team is going to look like coming off of that long layoff. They're going up against a Tulane team that is arguably one of the most mediocre teams in all of college football. They found a way to beat ECU last week. 2 weeks before that, they got run out of the building by UCF. They barely lost to SMU, and they got walloped by a Houston team this year that hadn't played any college football for a month. And that was their first game. So I don't know what Tulane is, and I don't know what I'm getting from Army, but I'm definitely interested because I hope this Army team has a chance to win the Commander-in-Chief trophy. Remember, when all three military schools play each other, the winner of that round robin between the three schools wins the Commander-in-Chief trophy. And this might be the year the Army actually wins the trophy and does not let it slip away the Air Force. And it starts tomorrow versus Tulane. I like to see if the Army Black Knights, who are averaging 33.6 points per game and have an incredibly talented defense. This Army team has only lost to one team this year. It's undefeated Cincinnati. And Cincinnati is the only team Army has seen this year has a better defense than them. Tulane has no defense. What does Army look like coming off of their bye, off of their break? We're going to find out tomorrow. Another game I'm watching very, very closely, and I'm very interested in, is this Penn State-Nebraska game. So for those who don't know, Nebraska has a huge problem on their hands. Their starting quarterback, Martinez, has played horrible this year. Nebraska's passing game has been also horrible this year. And last week, Nebraska benched their starting quarterback late in the third quarter for Luke McCaffrey. And this week, Scott Frost, the head coach of Nebraska, said, you know what? We're going to have open competition for the quarterback job. I'm not going to announce who the starter is. We're just going to have to wait and see. So 0-2 Nebraska, who has had horrible quarterback play this year and whose defense can't stop anything, is going against a Penn State team whose defense is arguably worse than Nebraska's. A Penn State team that looks like they are an absolute mess. I heard this stat the other day from somebody who covers college football, Ari Wasserman of The Athletic. He said that Penn State does not have a single top 10 recruit from the state of Pennsylvania coming to their school. So that means the quality of talent that Penn State has coming to their school is, frankly, subpar. I think Nebraska can win this game. It's at home in Nebraska. Nebraska has not played a single home game yet this year. And if Luke McCaffrey does play quarterback in this game, that might be a problem for Penn State because he's way more accurate and a much better quarterback than Martinez. So that's a game to watch for as well. 2-0 for teams. Teams that have won a single game this year. Someone's got to win. Or they could tie, right? Well, actually, no, they can't because college football games don't end in ties. That's where college football is so much better than the NFL. Why do we have ties in the NFL? Anyway, I digress. Another game I'm watching very, very closely that I'm very intrigued by. I don't have a pick for it, but I want to keep an eye on this game is I'm interested what happens in this Louisville, Virginia game. These are two teams. I have no idea who they are. They're two very inconsistent teams. They have an up and down seasons. Louisville, I don't know what they are. Are they a good offense? Are they a bad defense? They beat Florida State 48-16, but then they lose 12-7 to Notre Dame. I don't know what you are. We saw Virginia earlier this year lose to an NC State team. I thought NC State would cover the spread. I didn't expect them to win outright. By the way, before last week's win over North Carolina, which I think everyone's still surprised that Virginia won the game, they had lost 4 straight games. So who is Virginia? Who is Louisville? They both only have 2 wins on the year. Louisville is 2-5. Virginia is 2-4. We're going to find out tomorrow when they face each other. Something's got to give, right? Another game I'm very interested in watching tomorrow is I want to see what Oregon does after their big first win. Okay, you had one big win against Stanford, but now people have tape on you. And this is not the same Washington State team that we've seen in the past. It's a new coaching staff, a brand new offense, a brand new philosophy. And they're 1-0. Oregon has to leave the comfortable confines of Alston Stadium in Eugene, Oregon. They got to travel all the way up to Wazoo, literally, because where Washington State is basically in the middle of nowhere. And they got to play them. I want to know, does Oregon with this brand new young quarterback, Tyler Schott, and this talented running back in Verdell, do they have what it takes to beat a brand new Washington State team? And finally, Wisconsin at Michigan. We haven't seen Wisconsin for 2 weeks because of COVID-19 protocols. Again, like Army, what team am I going to get? I don't even know who's playing, honestly. Wisconsin's been very closed about the information about who's actually playing in this game. Meanwhile, Michigan, after their huge start to the season against Minnesota, they've been in free fall. They've lost 2 straight games, and one of them was to a much lesser team in Michigan State and an upstart team in Indiana. Michigan's been Jekyll and Hyde. I haven't seen Wisconsin in 2 weeks. I'm very interested to see what comes out of those games. So those are the games I'm watching for that I have no picks or projections for this week. Here's my college football picks for the week. 43-25 on the year. Not bad, not bad. We're going to try to see what we can do again this week. I want to start with the top of the slate here. Miami of Florida. The Hurricanes are traveling to Blacksburg to take on Virginia Tech. The Hurricanes have won 4 of their last 5 games. Their only loss in that stretch was to Clemson. So they only lost to one of the best teams in all of college football. And they head on the road to take on a Virginia Tech team that has lost 3 of their last 5 games. In those losses, their defense has allowed 39 points per game. The Virginia Tech defense struggled last week to contain dual-threat quarterback Malik Willis. The Liberty quarterback had 217 passing yards, 108 rushing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and 1 rushing touchdown. So if you have trouble stopping Malik Willis, now the next week you got Miami's even better dual-threat quarterback, Eric King. He's a better quarterback. He's a better dual-threat player. He's faster. He's more athletic than Willis. King is averaging 319 total yards per game this year. So the better quarterback with more talent is now coming to Virginia Tech, and they have more talent on the field. Virginia Tech has had a down year this year. I understand why Miami is the +2.5 on the road. It's because people are holding the NC State game against them. But as we have learned here on Football Fridays with yours truly, Josh Hennig, if you've listened to me any sort of time on 97.3 ESPN, Fridays are a wild card. You don't know what you're getting from teams. It's like Thursday Night Football in the NFL. It's Friday football in college football. Crazy things happen. And for NC State to be competitive with Miami, crazy things happen. It always happens. That's why we don't pick Friday night games anymore, because we know that it's not going to go the way we expect. People read way too much in the NC State game. Give me Miami plus 2.5 against a Virginia Tech defense that can't stop a dual threat quarterback. Let's head back to New Jersey. Rutgers is back on the schedule. Listen, this is the best Rutgers offense that we have seen since 2015. The Scarlet Knights offense has consistently averaged under 20 points per game in the last 5 years. This year, they're averaging 28.7 points per game. This is a better Scarlet Knights team. Bo Melton, Isaiah Pacheco, South Jersey's own, are up there rocking and rolling, and they welcome into their home an Illinois team that has a worse defense than the aforementioned Virginia Tech. Illinois is allowing not just 39 points per game on the year, but 475 yards per game. I understand Rutgers is being given the courtesy 6.5, but let's be realistic. Illinois is just not a good football team. I don't know what happened to them along the way, but you think about their schedule this year. They got dominated by Wisconsin in their first week. They lost to a Purdue team by almost double digits that still doesn't have their best player. And then they got crushed by a Minnesota team that was winless on the year. And you think Rutgers is only going to win by 6 or 7 points? No. This is going to be a double-digit win for the Rutgers Scarlet Knights at home. And they're going to be 2-2 on the year for the first time in, oh, that's right, in 5 years. Did I mention 2015? Let's hit on another game here. South Florida at Houston. Now, these are two teams that also don't have good defenses. Again, this is the pattern we have this year on a Football Friday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN and on the GameNight Podcast. I always tell you folks, you got to look at the teams that have bad defenses because bad defenses allow for you to have some crazy things to happen. I'm going the over 57.5. We've had a lot of success projecting that number because I'm projecting this game to be a Houston 32, USF 28 game. That means that is over 57.5. And part of the reason why I'm eyeing up these two bad defenses is because these are also two teams that find ways to score. Yeah, they're both allowing 35 points per game on defense. We've seen both of these teams also score a lot of points against mediocre opponents. USF has scored over 30 points in 2 of their last 3 games, while Houston is averaging 33.3 points per game in their last 4 games before they faced a Cincinnati team, which is the best defense in their conference. So I'm not going to factor in those numbers from the Cincinnati game because that's elite competition. But against subpar competition, against teams that don't have great defenses, Houston scores points. USF last 3 games. Have they all been losses? Yeah. But they scored 33 against Memphis. They scored 37 against Temple. So that tells me they can score points against Houston. It's going to be a high-scoring game. I know I'm projecting this to be a 32-28 game. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if it's like a 40-28 game or a 40-30 game because, like I said, these are two really bad defenses. So over 57.5. Let's go with Notre Dame at Boston College. The big win by Notre Dame over Clemson was the biggest victory for Notre Dame in arguably 27 years, the biggest win for that football program. Now they got to refocus against a feisty, no-quit Boston College team whose quarterback just happens to play for the Fighting Irish. That's right. Phil Jurkovec played at Notre Dame, is having a very good year this year with only 1 loss by double digits this season as BC. BC has been competitive in almost every game this season, and they're 3-1 at home this year. The 1 loss was 26-22 against the University of North Carolina. The one weakness in the Notre Dame defense is they are vulnerable to passing offenses. They're allowing over 211 passing yards per game. Notre Dame is great against the run game, but they're not so great against the passing game. Well, Boston College doesn't even try to run the ball half the time because they know they have this really good quarterback in Phil Jurkovec. The Boston College offense depends heavily on Jurkovec's arm, and with sophomore wide receiver Zay Flowers having a great season, 6 receiving touchdowns and 15.8 yards per catch. Give me the Boston College plus 12 at home. I think Notre Dame still wins the game. But remember, this is the Notre Dame team that beat Louisville 12-7. They beat Florida State 42-26 this year. They, at times, played level their competition. Was I wrong about them against Clemson? Yes. But I still think they played level their competition. I don't think Notre Dame is going to have the same energy against Boston College that they played with to win 2 overtimes at home against a raucous crowd against Clemson. They got to travel on the road to play at Boston College. I like the Boston College plus 12. Let's go to 2 more games, SEC games, where we get to the Eagles versus Giants game, keys to the game, and projection. Arkansas is a plus 17-point dog on the road at Florida. Now, remember, Arkansas is a team we've talked a lot about this year on Game Night. Arkansas is one of the biggest surprises of college football this year, and after last week's cover, as we projected right here on Game Night, the Razorbacks now 6-0 against the spread thanks to a come-from-behind win against Tennessee. Without their head coach, Sam Pittman, Arkansas travels to Gainesville to play one of the best teams in the SEC, the Florida Gators. They have only 1 loss on the year thanks to their one flaw. See, Texas A&M was able to beat Florida because Florida has one huge problem this year. And it's the reason why Florida will not be winning a national championship this year. Florida has a defense that is below average, to say the least. They're allowing 29 points per game. That doesn't tell the whole story. When they play mediocre offenses like Georgia and South Carolina, those teams got 28 and 24 points against them respectively. Those are 2 offenses that are not very good, and they're allowing 24 or more points against both of those teams. So the combination of a bad Florida defense, an Arkansas team that are playing for their head coach, Sam Pittman, who cannot make the game because of COVID-19 protocols, and don't forget, the Razorbacks quarterback, Felipe Franks, he used to play at Florida. I'm thinking this plus 17 is a line of disrespect. It's just straight disrespect. Florida can't stop people. Arkansas is going to be motivated. They're going to play hard. Arkansas has limited some of the best defenses in the SEC this year. They limited Ole Miss to just 21 points. They limited Tennessee to 24 points. They limited Auburn to 30 points. They limited Mississippi State to 14 points. Plus 17 is way too much on the number. Give me the plus 17. I think on top of it, don't forget, Florida is coming off of a huge win against their biggest rival, Georgia, last week. And just like the Notre Dame game, college football teams have trouble getting up and getting focused for 2 straight weeks against major opponents. I expect it to be a bit of a letdown for Florida. Florida may still win by 14 points, but it's not going to be 17. Finally, one more projection for you. South Carolina at Ole Miss. It was a promising start for the year for South Carolina, but as I mentioned earlier, they've suffered some bad losses this year at South Carolina. Okay? I mentioned that a little bit earlier in my discussion on different teams this year. South Carolina lost to Florida earlier this year. It looked okay for South Carolina at the beginning of the year, but since then, they've suffered back-to-back losses to LSU and Texas A&M, where their defense gave up a combined 100 points. Combined 100 points. And LSU is an okay offense. Texas A&M is a good offense. But Ole Miss is a great offense. Matt Corral is having an amazing season for the Ole Miss Rebels. Almost 2,000 passing yards already. 18 touchdowns. He's having an incredible year. And the Ole Miss offense is averaging 38 points per game. So South Carolina has to travel to Oxford to play an Ole Miss team. As I mentioned, they're averaging 38 points per game. 541 total yards per game. And South Carolina's quarterback job is up for grabs. Head coach Will Muschamp said this week it's an open competition after Colin Hill has been underwhelming and probably, you could say, a disappointment this year with the way he's played. Don't let Ole Miss's 2-4 record fool you. 3 of their 4 losses this year for Ole Miss have come against the best teams in the SEC. Ole Miss lost to Alabama 63-48. Shootout. They lost to Auburn 35-28. Pretty close game, right? Opening game of the season, they lost to Florida 51-35. The first time we saw Florida's offense all year. And they also lost to Arkansas. Did I just mention Arkansas? One of the surprise teams of college football. And in that game, Ole Miss was without 20 players due to COVID-19 protocols. Well, those players are back. They're playing for Ole Miss in this game. I don't think South Carolina has a chance in this game. They're saying, according to the odds makers, just minus 11.5. I'm projecting, according to my math, Ole Miss wins this game by 16 or more points. I think this is a huge win for Ole Miss. They're at home. South Carolina is in a tailspin. Will Muschamp's job is on the line. He's probably going to start a different quarterback at some point in this game. I like Ole Miss. Win big. Those are your college football projections for the weekend. Finally, I will give you my Eagles, Giants, keys to the game, and what I think is going to happen. Of course, I want to remind you, Game Night being brought to you by weightliftinghq.com. Get 10% off your order with Radio 10. That's Radio 10 at weightliftinghq.com. So when I look at the Eagles and Giants game, the first thing that comes to my mind is the Philadelphia Eagles are coming off of a bye. They're getting healthier. And the Giants, they play a lot of teams close. I think the Eagles are just the better team. So to me, number one, the Eagles need to play smart football. You got Miles Sanders coming back. You're going to have Dallas Goedert for another week for Carson Wentz. He's got the majority of his weapons out there on the field. The offensive line is going to be healthier than they've been most of the year. Take advantage of it. Have a balanced offense. If the Eagles don't have turnovers and the Eagles have a balanced offense, they can win this game by a touchdown or more. I think it's still within Carson Wentz to be a very good quarterback. It's still in Doug Peterson to be a very good play caller. And maybe it does take getting everybody back on the field for them to do it. But I believe in this Eagles team. The defense has played better than people are giving them credit for this year. I think if the Eagles don't have turnovers and Carson Wentz doesn't have the turnover issue, plays smart football, Doug Peterson calls a smart game plan, they can win this game. Second key to this game is, I mentioned the Eagles defense. They're top 5 in the NFL in quarterback hurries, sacks, quarterback pressures. That line needs to get after Daniel Jones. I have no faith in Daniel Jones. I didn't like him being drafted that high by the Giants. I think he's way overrated. I heard Tom McShay say the other day that Daniel Jones is being asked to do things by the Giants organization that he's just not prepared for. So that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a young quarterback who's doing his best in a situation. And if the Eagles can get after him, get the pressure on him, and force him to make bad decisions, I think the Eagles can maybe get a turnover or two against the Giants, because Daniel Jones, when you get pressure on him, he does make mistakes. With all that being said, I think the Eagles win this game. If you've been listening to me long enough, you know that so far this year, I have picked, 1, 2, 3, 4. I've picked 5 straight Eagles games correctly. I think the Eagles win this game this Sunday because I think they're the better team, and I think they're coming off the bye. They're prepared more than ever before for this Giants team. The Giants made it close once. I don't think it's going to be a 1-point win for the Eagles. I think that they're going to win by a touchdown or more. I think this team is going to show they are the better team in the NFC East. I think the Eagles beat the Giants on Sunday. And just like I did with the college football games, I'll give you really quick some games to watch for on Sunday in the NFL slate. What games am I watching closely? I am watching very closely Washington versus Detroit. Alex Smith, his first NFL start at quarterback since breaking his leg 2 years ago. How does Alex Smith look with a full week of preparation? Can Detroit do anything against the Washington offense, which has been very inconsistent this year? Matthew Stafford had a bad game last week, and he bounced back for Detroit. I'm interested in Washington versus Detroit. I'm also interested in Tampa Bay versus Carolina. An embarrassing loss for Tom Brady and the Buccaneers last week on Sunday Night Football in prime time against the Saints. Tom Brady has a history of bouncing back and bouncing back big. Carolina will be without their best player, Christian McCaffrey. I want to see. We all expect Brady to come back with a big game. But can he and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers actually do it? I want to see with my own 2 eyes. That's a game I'm watching. I'm also watching very closely the Chargers at the Dolphins. Two of the top 3 quarterbacks drafted this past draft. Justin Herbert, Tua Tagovailoa going head-to-head. I think Herbert has been incredible since coming in relief of Tyrod Taylor just several weeks ago for the Chargers. He's been incredible. Don't let the Chargers record fool you. Herbert has played above and beyond almost anybody's expectations this year. Meanwhile, Tua Tagovailoa, he's on a Dolphins team that's fighting for a playoff spot. The Dolphins have a chance to go to the postseason. The Dolphins don't want to slip that slip away, so they're going to play the Chargers very hard. I expect this to be a shootout between Tua and Herbert, and I can't wait to watch it. These are two of the best young quarterbacks the NFL is going to have for the next several years. As long as Tua stays healthy, I think Herbert is a shoo-in to be an NFL starter for at least a decade and be very, very productive. The final game I'm watching very, very closely is Buffalo versus Arizona. These are two teams that have playoff potential. These are two teams with winning records. These are two teams that have had some strange losses this year. The Cardinals coming off of a tough loss to the Dolphins last week, 34-31. And a few weeks before that, I still don't know how they lost 31-21 to the Panthers. Meanwhile, the Bills, they had 2 losses in a row that they didn't look right. The Tennessee game that they lost on Tuesday night, they look like a team that didn't play for a few weeks when they got crushed by the Titans. Meanwhile, against the Chiefs, they only scored 17 points. Now, since then, they've won 3 in a row. But they haven't done it very, very splashy. Like, they barely beat the Jets 18-10. They barely beat a mediocre Patriots team, 24-21. And they finally broke out offensively against one of the worst defenses in the NFL, the Seahawks, by winning 44-34. So what am I getting from the Bills and the Cardinals? I have no idea. They have 2 very talented young quarterbacks. They have some major weapons on defenses who can get after people. Budda Baker for the Cardinals. The Bills have a very good pass rush. I want to know which team's for real. I think both these teams can make the postseason. But which quarterback steps up and puts his best foot forward? Is it Josh Allen or is it Kyler Murray in that game? I can't wait to watch that on Sunday. I'm Josh Hennig. This is the Game Night Podcast. Thanks for listening. Thanks for engaging me each and every week. I appreciate all of you who subscribe to the YouTube channel, who hit that like button. Follow me each night here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. I'll be back on Monday at 6 o'clock. Off the air for the rest of the weekend because of college football. But we will be back on Monday to talk more about the football weekend. Of course, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Josh Hennig. Hennig spelled Hennig. Catch you all on Monday at 6 o'clock on 97.3 ESPN.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.